Hey, welcome back to the Advisors Compass. I'm Chuck Downs. I'm here with Andy Schwartz. And each month we sit down to have the real conversations advisors are having about growth, scale, and clarity. And if you're ready to grow faster, scale smarter, and build what lasts, you're in the right place. We're going to get started. Andy, how are you?
I'm great, Chuck. How are you?
Awesome. Awesome. Good to see you, my
You
friend.
too, man. You too.
Hey, so Andy, in our last episode, we talked about Gen 2 in terms of valuation and protecting what you've built, what advisors have built. And this episode is about something that shows up much earlier than that. It's the moment that you know that you need help, but you're worried about how clients are going to experience it. And a lot of successful advisors they're spread thin
Yeah.
and they know there's another level of success. They know there's another level of freedom that's available, but to get there, they have to leverage their time differently. And you and I have both seen and we've discussed where many of them get stuck is introducing that service advisor, that junior advisor, because they're afraid the client will feel passed along or pushed aside. And so, first question is, how have you been able to introduce a service advisor
Yeah.
so that your clients didn't feel handed off or abandoned?
Yeah. It's a great question, Chuck. I mean, how do I introduce a service advisor without making my clients feel like I'm leaving them behind or that they're not important? I think that what we need to do is, or what we don't do is we don't send the client an email and say, by the way, it's been a pleasure and Chuck Downs will now be your service advisor on my team. He's really great. And if you ever need anything, feel free to give me a call. We do not do that. What we do is we spend about a year being together with those clients. And we're not just talking about smaller clients. We're talking about all the clients because the clients that you think are your large files today, especially if you're 30 something, will not be your large files or large clients 5 or 10 years from now. So the idea is that we want to be able to have somebody else on our, working with us at all levels. And so my service advisors will spend a year, working with those clients with me. And then what will happen is over time, it will be very easy. They'll get very, very used to and comfortable. And it's very easy for me to ultimately, if I need to then bow out and let that person handle that file by themselves.
Andy, if they're spending a year with you, in this case, Alexi, if she's spending a year with you, how have you seen that being beneficial for her learning, for her growth, for the way
Yeah.
that she communicates to your clients?
Yes. So the benefit of having an advisor spend a year with you, and there's many benefits. The first is don't assume that you are not a talented communicator, Mr. or Miss Advisor, because I think I am. And don't assume that just because we hire somebody that understands markets, really knows how to talk to clients, and more important, how to listen to clients. And so if they can spend a year with you, we are training them. And also remember, we have our own style and our own personality. We've attracted clients because of that style and personality, right? All clients don't want to work with me because everybody's a little different. So we want to make sure that they can have their own unique, things to add, but that it is somewhat, the way we do business. And then so I think it's really, really important. We cannot assume that just because they're smart or because they understand investments, they are ready for prime time. And this gives them a year to do that, for us to develop them.
Andy, when you make that introduction just right off the bat, okay, so someone new is on this Zoom for the first time. It's been you all these years. Now you got someone there. What does that sound like? What does that introduction sound like?
Yeah. So when I introduce that new advisor, service advisor for the first time, what I do and what I've done in the past is, and again, remember, this is going to be a process over time, but I will introduce, that person. Alexis is my main service advisor now. And she'll be on and it'll be like, well, who's that? And I say, well, I just want to introduce Alexis to you. Lex is on my team. Now, everybody will have lots of different reasons and lots of different stories to tell clients about who they are, where they came from. But I think there should be a story. It shouldn't just be, this is Alexis Miller. She's on my team now. And also, we want to maybe tell people why we're doing this. Now, my reason why I am introducing a new service advisor to our team isn't because I'm too big to work with you and I'm busy or I want more free time because I don't know how that really necessarily benefits the client. The reason, Mr. or Miss Prospect, the reason that Alexis is on our call today and she's going to be working with me to work for you is really two or threefold. The first reason is that if anything were to ever happen to me, we want to make sure that there is complete continuity. Second is that, listen, two heads are better than one. So you've now got my team, you have me and another very, very smart advisor, who is working for you. So we're trying to expand our service, not shrink our service. And maybe most important for me is that I want to make sure that we can serve your family for the long term. We want to take care of your kids, not just you. And I will not be there for the next 40 years to take care of your children, but Alexis can be. And so that really is what is motivating, us to expand our team coverage for you and your family.
So there's a lot to unpack there. I guess I'll start with the last point that you made. So really, what you're talking about is positioning it and using it as a way to for generational. You guys being their generational wealth advisors. How has that played out? What are maybe some key steps to make sure that that happens related, I guess, to that next generation?
We want to present ourselves as a generational wealth firm for a couple of reasons. The main reason is we all know that when mom and dad, or even when dad passes, if we don't have a very strong relationship with mom, it's very, very likely that we will lose that business because those adult children are going to have their own ideas. So the first reason why we want to make sure that we are operating in a multi-generational kind of capacity, first reason is we want to protect the assets that we own today. If we can do that and we can demonstrate that, then we have increased the value of our firm. Because when you talk about what's your firm worth, and if you ever get into a conversation, when you start talking about valuation or even sale, one of the things you're going to understand is this business buttoned down? No, is this business safe? The second reason that we want to, as advisors, position ourselves as a generational advisor is that there are lots and lots of great clients, in that second generation pool. I mean, I picked up two very nice accounts last week. One family, two boys, both private equity, absolutely lovely, lovely people. I mean, enjoyed both conversations, and the second or third conversations we had, they become clients. But there is tremendous organic growth within the client base with their children. And so there's two reasons why we do that. One is to grow organically, and the second is to protect our existing book.
I love that. And then how are you making sure that it feels more like, because I know some advisors are like, well, I don't want to feel like I'm, honing in on the kids and things like that. Is there any specific language or setup that you do whenever you're explaining that, and how are you actually getting in front of the kids? What does that sound like with the clients?
Yeah, so great question. I mean, the question always is, how do I ask for, the referral to the kids without feeling like I'm, prospecting the family, and that it benefits me? I think, Chuck, we talked last week about, or last time we did this, we talked about referrals, and we talked about the idea that you should say to clients, I so appreciate, Chuck, the business that we do together. And I just want you to know that if I can ever be of help to anyone that you care about, I don't care about whether they have a lot of money or not. It would be my pleasure to help them because you've helped me. Now, who do they care more about than their children? And I would argue no one. So one way to have this conversation is, look, one, we want to serve the family and we consider ourselves working for the family. I know that you have adult children. If we do not know who these adult children are, shame on us, because those are just questions. It's not, hey, introduce me to your kids. It's, hey, how are the kids doing? What's going on with Robbie? What's going on with Susie? Oh, Robbie's, at Blackstone. He's an investment banker. We should know where these kids are, who they work for, what kind of jobs they have. If we don't, shame on us, right? Because that's just bad communication. assuming we know who they are and what they're doing, the ones that we really want. And I don't mind talking if it's a big file and they're older people. I don't care if the kids have money or not. I want to protect my book. But there's also great opportunity there. So then I would say to my client, Chuck, I know that, that Rob's doing great, and I think it would be a great idea for me to introduce myself to Rob, because if anything ever happens to you, or God forbid happens to both, I don't want to necessarily meet the kids under the wrong circumstances. And if I can be of any help to them, and it doesn't matter to me whether they have any money or not, because we serve the family, I think it would be a great idea for them to know who we are. And if we can be of help, we'd love to help them. And almost everybody says, great idea, And so, and then what ends up happening is either we set something up where they say, yep, I'm going to call them and we'll follow up next week. And I'm telling you, we're having conversations every week, pretty much, with adult children, and half the time they actually become clients. And they might be smaller clients. I have my Gen 2 on the call with me. They do not have a 10-year relationship with me. We start the conversation. Obviously, I let them know that my Gen 2 is on with me because, Chuck, even though I know I only look like I'm 30, I'm actually your parents' age. And we want to make sure that we have somebody that can take care of you for the rest of your life. And that's why Alexis is on the call with me. And so, and then, they rather work with her anyway. And then she ends up taking care of them going forward. So that's kind of our process to get to Gen 2.
This is a good moment to pause and share something that we've been building. It's called the Playbook for Wealth Advisors. If you've built a successful practice, but you still feel like too much runs through you, then this is for you. The Playbook is the framework behind many of the conversations we have on this podcast: how to think like an owner, create real leverage, and grow without sacrificing your time, energy, or relationships. Most advisors don't need more ideas. They need a clear way to structure what they already know. And that's what the Playbook provides. You can learn more at epicsuccess.com/playbook. Let's get back to the conversation. I love it. That's really, really good. The other thing I want to unpack from maybe three questions ago, we started out with the leverage, and so since you brought Alexis on, how have you seen your time, your leverage being freed up, and what is she doing that's helping you do that?
The leverage, how do I quantify the leverage created by having this Gen 2 on all my calls has been incredible. Because think about what happens. So we're on a call for half an hour, whatever's going on, sometimes simple, sometimes complicated. When I get off the phone and she gets off the phone, now someone else handles everything. She goes through the Zox notes. She goes to and tells people what trades to make. She puts the notes in. She gives Paul the information, and I can just move on to my next call. The idea that I would be responsible, for basically breaking all that down and tracking it, and the fact that I do not have any responsibility of that going forward means that I can have, 7, 8, 9 appointments a day and it not be completely out of control. I run a firm. We're 15 on our way to 20, on our way to 50 billion in assets. We're probably a couple hundred people today. And I have a $2.2 billion book as a side hustle. And it would be impossible for me to do that without having the help that I have. And we've always talked about this. It's never about the expense of the people, or the cost. It's always about the revenue created, and it's all about leverage. And so she basically allows me to spend time with clients and then spend time, with my firm, so that I don't have to get caught up in all the minutia, because I don't have the time for that.
You've done this recently. I mean, this isn't you've been doing this for 4 decades. This is
Yeah.
recent. I mean, if you could go back, because I know a lot of our listeners, they're maybe they are 30 and look 30. And so, or they're 40, 45, 50, whatever the number is. What would you say to those listeners, those advisors as they're thinking about this leverage, because some of them are thinking, oh, that doesn't pertain to me because I'm, they're not worried about me checking out, and
Yeah.
retiring anytime soon. What do
Yeah.
you say to those advisors? And maybe, well, let's just start there.
Yeah. So why would a 30 or a 40 or even a 50-year-old advisor, want to start to think about introducing, service advisors to their mix? Look, for some, it could just simply be that they want leverage and they want more free time. Now, that's never been my thing. My thing is maximize opportunity. So, if I equate this to sports, when I leave the field, I'm not leaving anything, on the field. So I'm using this as a way to maximize and grow my business as big as possible. But one could just be to make your life easier. If I'm a younger advisor and I want to convince, an older advisor, how do I convince that senior advisor that they really should use me because it's not just better for me, but it's better for them? I would say that one, the more time that the senior advisor has to be prospecting and doing offensive work, the more they should better grow their business. And again, the clients that you think are bigger today, if you're 35 years old, I mean, my minimum client, is what I'm willing to take on myself today has gone up like every 2 or 3 years, a lot. Like I never would have thought that what is to me a client that I want today to bring onto my arc is certainly I don't want less than $5 million. That doesn't mean I won't distribute that to someone else in the firm, but I didn't want that because that's not accretive to my business because it has to be serviced. But I would have never, even 5 years ago, that would not have been my number. So if you're a 40-year-old advisor today, and if you think $1 million file is a good file, which it's fine, but I'm telling you right now, if you're 40 today, when you're 45, it won't be. Not if you're developing and growing. And so we need to have these people on our teams so that we can continue to move our businesses, upscale and create a much larger average client, to be profitable. With that said, though, don't be lazy, like, don't be in a situation where I'm 30 years old. I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm just going to hire people. I'm going to let them do the work so I don't have to work. It's not a Ponzi scheme, but at the same time, if we're doing it for the right reason, if we're doing it for either the reason where we want to be able to make sure that we've got long-term coverage for the family, if we're doing it because we want to make sure that we can spend our time, working with people that might be more interesting anyway. I'm not to talk to a $2 million file where there's nothing going on. It's just not fun for me. I want to talk to a 20, a 30, a 50. I want to be challenged. I want to be able to show people things that we can do, whether it be on the tax side or on the investment side, that I can't have that conversation at $2 million. So it keeps me intellectually engaged and it keeps me interested and it's more engaging for me. But at the same time, though, from a business proposition, obviously, it's where is our time better spent? And there's huge leverage in this, huge. And I know a lot of people have done a really good job with it. I know a lot of advisors that have.
I know that we don't look back. You don't look back and with any type of regret. So this isn't that. But this is only something you've done recently. You're at
Yeah, yeah.
2.2 billion. If you would have done this 10 years ago, how do you think your practice would have evolved differently over the last 10 years?
I think I was always hung up on the idea of how would these people feel, about this. And I don't know, yeah, I think that's probably what it was. And I was afraid that, we would lose clients. And the truth of the matter is if you find the right people and you got to be thoughtful about who these people are. And if you take your time in the transition, the clients get it. I mean, oftentimes I'll be on a call with her because I have the time, and the client will almost be saying, "Well, Andy, we don't need you on the call. I know you're busy." It's like they almost feel like apologetic that I'm on the call, and I know it's working because when we get off these calls, and when someone emails something, or the next day or a week later, they're not emailing me; they're emailing her. And another thing we want to do, a way to make this process quicker, meaning the process to get your Gen 2 engaged with the clients, and the way to make this a better transition is that whenever something has to be done, something has to be sent out, a question has to be answered, a follow up, don't do it yourself. Let them do it, because the more they can engage with the clients, the easier that handoff is. And also, something that was very hard for me was when we are on the phone with our Gen 2s, shut the hell up. I mean, it's so hard because here we are, we've spent our whole lives being, the talker and going over and talking to them. And so what I'll do is I'll start the conversation by just asking, is there anything going on in your guys' life that we should be aware of financially, liquidity wise, anything that would impact, what we're doing? And then we listen. And if there's nothing going on, then I'll say, Lex, why don't you take us through the review? And then she does the review. And I try really, really hard to shut up. And sometimes, I'm not that good at it. And sometimes I get off the phone and I say, Lex, you got to tell me just to shut up. Right. So it does take some discipline. And sometimes it's hard just to listen. It's hard, but you have to do that. You have to let them take an active part so that the clients get confidence, in them.
So maybe walk us through what that first year looked like. I mean, I'm kind of envisioning that maybe the first few months that service advisor's just there, they're listening. Maybe you
Yep.
debrief after. What does it look like? When do you start handing it over? And kind of what's that year look like? Getting them ready to take over.
What does the process look like, and what's sort of the timetable to get that new Gen 2 from first call to take over almost completely? So first call is the introduction and the why. So we want to explain to the client why we're doing this. For us, we want to cover next gen. We want to be a long-term solution. We want to be a family, coverage office. So we want them to have better service. We want to make sure that they are protected. So that's easy. And that's the why. Then why that person? And for me, it's a very personal story. I've known her a long time. I trust her implicitly. She's like one of my own kids, and she's really, really smart. And I explain their background, and so it's great to have the story. In the very beginning, they listen. The first call, she's listening because remember, the first call or two, it's about training. So I'm training her. And even though she spent lots of time on the institutional investment side, she doesn't have experience in this conversation. And what am I listening for? And then when we get off the call, I say, Lex, there were a couple of things that were said today. I just want to make sure you heard them. And I want to make sure you understand what direction we're going to take here. By the second or third call, I want her to start participating. Certainly by the third call, we might start our conversation and then I'll say, Lex, why don't you take us through the numbers? Why don't you take us through the review? And then I'm there listening very carefully so that if I think she's missing something, then I interject. And then by the fourth, by the end of the year, I'm saying hello. I'm asking, is there anything going on? And then she's just taking it from there. What's very important is that any interactions between quarterly reviews, and these are with bigger clients, any interaction between quarter reviews, she's handling the interaction. She's handling the follow up. She's sending out, whatever information they wanted. They're getting used to seeing her email and her answering so that what will happen is they will start to get comfortable knowing that they ask her if they want something. They're not asking me. And so it's just training. I'm training her. We're training the clients. Now you got to have good people. She's really, really smart and I pay her really, really well. And she has lots and lots of incentive and she's got equity. So, she's all in. I mean, she's so all in that we're on a phone call this morning with a couple. She's at a bachelorette party in the Caribbean. And I'm like, Lex, you do not have to be on these calls this morning. And she goes, no, there's nothing really going on this morning. I want to be on these calls, and one of them's a brand new, very large file we picked up and she wants to be on the call. And I appreciate her being on the call, but that's, and I would say that that's partly because she's fantastic. And it's partly because she's really, really well paid and she feels like a partner and she wants to participate whenever she can.
The two all of that's really good, insightful. The two things that jump out at me, that a lot of advisors will miss, um, is the training, because they're on to the next meeting. So I love the fact that you're debriefing with her. You're making sure that she's getting what she needs to get. So the training, the development is something that, we just naturally, we maybe put it on the side. So that was a key piece. And then the other key piece I heard you say is that she's doing all the interactions in between the calls, and so I'm assuming that was always Paul doing that, or a
Yes.
large part of it.
Yep. Correct.
Now she's picking it up, and so by moving that over to her, it's making her even more relevant, and they're used to interacting with her more. I assume is what's happening.
100%. 100%. And so, yeah, so by by giving her the responsibility of the in-between interaction, what that's done is Paul's my chief of staff. Paul would have always done that interaction, which also, listen, which is good because they know there's Paul, now there's Lex, there's Danny if they need money. I mean, there's all these different people. But now what it also does is it frees Paul up, so, and that makes his life a little bit easier and my life a little bit easier because he can be more productive. But most importantly, what it does, it gives her ownership. She becomes the
Mhm.
go-to. And then over time, and again, I think the big mistake that advisors make is that they assume that these people are equipped, that they have the skills to both interact with the client and to hear the client. And I keep saying hear because remember, there's a couple of things that go on here that are really, really important. It's not just a matter of doing the review and answering the questions. Remember, we have to grow our businesses organically. And a fair amount of organic growth comes from our clients, whether that's referrals or whether that's getting more of their wallet share. If we can't hear everything that's going on in a meeting, and then that means that we can't ask the questions that need to be asked to find that money, whether it's people, that they can refer us to or other parts of their wallet, then our businesses aren't going to grow. So we have to train them. And so, yeah, this is a training process. That first year is as much about training her as it is getting clients used to being, there with them and weaning me off of them, I guess.
You mentioned earlier, even your best clients. I think that probably most advisors would think, "Oh, it's, I've got mine, and then this person's on these." Walk us through what it's been like to have all of your clients, including your very, very, very best clients, being, in this, this new modus operandi, if you will.
The best part about having a lead advisor working with your best clients, not your bottom, C clients or Bs, and we all segment our client base. But the reason you want to have your second gen or your junior advisor, your lead advisor working with you and your best clients, for me is that one, if I can't, there was a week ago I was traveling, and so we had to make a decision: do I cancel 5 or 6 meetings, or do we let the meetings go? And so, and look, I can talk to 50, I'm talking to probably most days 40 or $50 million. I mean, it's like every day. So it's not as though there are days where, because I'm not talking to $1 million and $2 million anymore. I might have 7 or 8 meetings and one's at 10, one's at 15, one's at 20. I mean, somebody could be more. So instead of me having to cancel that schedule, she just does it. And I was on a call with one of my biggest clients, and a financial guy, very smart. And we're talking about some very complex strategies where, it's tax law strategies, and complicated. And so, I'm involved in the conversation. She is, and I think he said to me, "Well, why don't you let the expert, you know, explain it to me?" And that's her. And you know what? Because I sell her that way. I don't have to be the smartest guy on the call. I don't need to be. If you think you need to be the smartest person on the call, if this is about how you feel and your ego, that is a huge mistake. We want these clients to think that the people we brought in are smarter than we are. And that's why when I introduced her initially, I made sure they knew she went to Brown. I made sure that I explained what her experience was, how big of a job she had. And I tell them, quite frankly, she's way smarter than me. Not that that's very hard because I went to Glassboro State College, but still, it's not about pumping me up. It's not about them thinking that their advisor is the smartest guy on the planet, because first of all, I'm not. It's about all these people around me are. I want to be more and more expendable because it allows me freedom and flexibility not to be involved in everything. And it makes my business more valuable because long term it doesn't matter so much whether I'm here or not. You want to build a business where if God forbid you're not there for whatever reason, that business stays there. That's a valuable business.
Let's do 2 more questions, Andy. The first one would be, I know that even those are your best clients. You've got some clients that have completely you've handed that relationship
Yeah.
off to her. I also know that it's not a goodbye, see you later, and then you've checked out. Share with us what you're doing ongoing with a
Yeah.
lot of the relationships that you've handed off to her.
Yep. So, what's my involvement on relationships with clients that I've somewhat handed off? We have three segments. So we have this segment of like 2 million and below, which I do not interact with. So I have another advisor who's very good, and he takes care of that segment of the book. Now, what I do though is I get a birthday list every Monday, and I send birthday text messages out to everyone. I mean, and maybe it doesn't matter, or maybe it does matter. It's just something that I do every morning. I get up in the morning, it's in my book, and I send Chuck, happy birthday, hope all is well. Maybe I haven't talked to you in 3 years. Guy this morning, I haven't talked to in years, but you know what? They send a message back. Hey, I really appreciate it. Hope all is well. Sometimes they'll say, Mike's been great, whatever. So I do that, but I don't really interact with that segment. Call that the 2 million and below, client. Then we've got, the 2 or 3 to say 10 or 7. So what will happen is she'll handle a lot of those by herself. And sometimes, I'll be with her if I can be. But now I have the flexibility that if my schedule's double booked or there's something I have to do, particularly for the firm, I don't have to cancel that meeting. And then the third segment, which is the highest segment, those are the meetings I want to be on, but I have her on those meetings so that I don't have to do anything after. And so it just makes my life easier, where she will do the download from the meeting. She'll go to the team, she'll figure everything out and take care of any follow up. So that's sort of how I, sort of segment, these sort of three different pieces. But every now and then I want to pop back in. If I'm free, the reason to have people like this isn't so that I can take a nap, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's so that if I have something else I have to do, or if I want to actually take a day off, or if I do take vacation, that everything doesn't have to stop. But if I'm in the office and she's got a call or we have a call, if I can be on it, I'm going to be on it because, I want to, and especially if it's a good client that I haven't been engaged in a year, every year or so, I want to pop in. Great to be involved in the annual review. Not just a regular review, but the annual review where you're updating a retirement analysis, you're trying to figure out what's going on. Great time to be involved if there's something happening. I mean, we know that there's a sale coming of their business, or we know they're getting ready to retire, or something's happening, with their families, and maybe there's inheritances. It's a good time to be sort of re-engaged. Yeah, but I don't want to lose contact. If there's any client that's large enough that it would be painful for me to lose them, then I want to stay in some contact with them.
Last question. Thanks for that explanation too. Last question would be, if someone listening wants to bring a service advisor on this year, what
Yep.
would you say is the safest first move that they can make to protect the trust of their clients?
Be very careful about who that service advisor is. So I would say here our philosophy is hire slow and fire fast. And this is a really important position, one of the most important positions you're going to have. So what I would say is, be very, very careful and make sure there's a lot of alignment, and at the end of the day, make sure that they get the joke. The bottom line is that we work for these people, meaning the clients. It is our job to serve these people. And I am grateful, grateful, grateful that these people entrust in me their money. And I don't care whether it's 500,000 or whether it's 50 million. It's all they got, and they give it to us and they trust us. Whoever you bring onto your team has to know that and has to believe and feel that. If these are not people that care about people first, then I think that would be a mistake. So again, be very, very careful and thoughtful about who you bring in, to your business, to your most valuable asset. So I would say that's first. They've got to be smart. They've got to be hardworking. They've got to be committed. They have to be good listeners. And then it's a process. And then we have to train them and we have to be patient and we have to share because them leveraging and making me rich, doesn't really motivate anybody, right? What motivates people is what they make, and how they can be rewarded and what their future looks like. And then the last thing I would say is if you're going to bring somebody in, and this is a little bit more negative, but what I would say is make sure that you are contractually protected. Okay. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to bring somebody in and just assume that they would never go anywhere. They would never take my clients or my clients would never leave with them. Make sure that if you are bringing these people in, that there is a contractual understanding and agreement, something that protects you, that if these people decided that they've got a better relationship now than you do because you haven't talked to them in 2 or 3 years, and that, some institution will write them a big fat check if they can steal a bunch of your clients, make sure that you can get your pound of flesh back. Make sure that that has to get bought from you, not taken from you. So I would just make sure, and I know that's hard. Nobody wants to do that, but it's important.
Yeah. Good stuff, my friend. Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing. This was awesome. Thanks all of you for spending time with us on the Advisor's Compass. If today's conversation helped you rethink how you introduce help, how you protect trust, and how you serve clients without feeling like you're stepping away, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what's next. And if you know another advisor who's feeling stretched thin or they're trying to grow without sacrificing relationships, share this episode with them because when you're able to expand your team with intention and you're able to position yourself as being able to serve generations, not just the client. You don't just retain assets, you're able to build a business that lasts. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Herein referred to as 1 Point BFG. 1 Point BFG is not affiliated with Advisor Compass. Chuck Downs is not affiliated with 1 Point BFG, nor compensated by 1 Point BFG. The opinions expressed by Andy Schwartz are my own personal views and experiences as an investment advisor representative. The information contained herein is provided for informational and discussion purposes only and is not and may not be relied on in any manner as legal, tax, accounting, or regulatory advice, nor does it constitute an offer to sell or solicitation of an offer to buy any securities and may not be used or relied upon in connection with any offer or sale of securities. The information, as set forth herein, should not be construed or interpreted as 1 Point BFG's guarantee of any particular investment outcome or a guarantee of future investment returns or results.